Hey, welcome to the Lead Up Podcast. I am back with you again for another guest interview on our Elite Leader series on the Lead Up Podcast, where we just want to help leaders lead more effectively. We're really talking about just that intersection between character and capacity. And today I'm joined by someone I met a while back who started and co-founded a company and is leading really well, Amanda Housh. Uh, Co-founded OPTC. I'm going to let her tell you what that stands for when she gets started. But she kind of founded that on a wing and a prayer, as she said, over 12 years ago now, with just two people, and has grown that to, I think, around almost 100 people now. I think she told me recently she onboarded her 98th employee, which is awesome. 6 locations. I know, being an entrepreneur and kind of self-employed, how hard it is to go from a dream to something that you really are passionate about and live out every day. I know the hard work behind that, Amanda. I'm excited to share some of your ideas with our listeners today. Welcome to the Lead Up Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. My name is Amanda Housh. I am in Yukon, Oklahoma. And that's the O in OPTC. It's Oklahoma Pediatric Therapy Center. Our company helps kiddos in our area with OT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, also ABA in the autism field and psychology. So a growing team, as he said, started with just a couple and now at 100. So, we just added 2 friends last week to get us to the 100 mark. So that
Wow.
yeah.
That's a huge milestone, right? It means, oh, we're really a business now. How I've been doing this like 12 years. I think when we talked, you started your career personally as a chiropractor, correct? And then partnered with one of your friends. It really kind of moved from this on, personally putting your hands on people and patients to more of an administrative role. So talk that transition a little bit and the dream and kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Gosh, yes. I'll I won't give the whole long story, but the short version is my daughter needed speech therapy, and I had a PT clinic just right beside the chiropractic clinic. And the decided to bring speech in-house in our community. It was not um really available at that time. She's now almost 16, so it's been a minute ago, but 12 years ago. And so we went from PT, from chiropractic to PT to speech and then decided to go all peds. So we really started with, we say, with a therapy swing, a trampoline, and a big calling. The need was big, and we decided to jump in um, and go ahead and move forward to help in our community, and then just added other sites over time. And so, like you mentioned, went from just a few to now at 100 across all of our different sites in the metro area of Oklahoma City. The clinician change was difficult. You go from um, treating people and trying to help them meet their outcomes. Patients all have their outcomes in whatever health field we're in, to trying to get this business and our business and the leaders within that to meet those outcomes. So that is a learning curve. You kind of learn through some stumbling mistakes and lean into resources. Uh, and that kind of got us to where we are now. But we really knew that it takes kind of building that leadership. So it couldn't just be me or my business partner, Deanna, to help us to get us to that next level. So it was going to be capped out if it was just us.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. Because look, I talk with leaders literally all over the country. And in the hospital environment, which is where I do a lot of my work as well, a lot of leaders get promoted from technician, nurse, pharmacist, PT, whatever it may be, whatever they went to school for, they get promoted from that role that they're really good at into a leadership role. Talk about leaving your comfort zone, treating patients every day to kind of leaving your comfort zone and stepping into more of a administrative strategy, leadership, casting vision type of role. And where does the company maybe suffer when you kinda are playing both sides of that? Because there's a time you have to kinda play both sides of that, correct?
Correct. So yeah, you can only I always say you only have so much to give and you have to recognize what our human capacity is. And now that can grow a little bit with some technologies, but we're still limited to what we can do and you can't do it all. And I would become the bottleneck if I tried to. And so understanding that we needed to allow me to step away from my practice. That was kind of probably a tipping point of growth is when I wasn't kind of pulled in both directions because I found myself either not giving it all to the patients that were on the other side of the suite or not giving it all to our team in the pediatric clinic. And so I had to kind of have that gut check of, hey, you can't do it all. You're going to have to kind of dive into one at 100% or more. So it is similar. I still think, I still use that clinical hat. I think that helps me in our training of our clinicians and telling them what we want for what we call the OPTC way or the OPTC excellence to make sure that we get the outcomes we want and that the families have a special experience when they're here. But I know that I can't be in every room in every building. And so it's trying to translate that from what's in my heart and my head and our other administrative team, and our co-founder, from what our vision is to getting that translated into other people that are also clinicians. And so um, they too were not trained to uh, be a leader or to lead a team. They're trained in this field often in supervision. So a lot of them might have a entry level provider that they're used to giving that feedback clinically, but they have a hard time with those hard conversations or building culture or talking to them about productivity because that's not in the graduate study. So we have to try to build coaching systems or just what we call like a scorecard or report card to hold them accountable and give them some benchmarks to reach and celebrate those wins along the way. But I will say we still have room to grow, but we've come a long way in the 12 years. We've learned how to do that better. So that's kind of where we're at.
So, talk about you mentioned the OPTC way or OPTC excellence. Share with our audience what is that, and then how do you communicate that to the 100 employees that you have now so that hey, you're right now you're spending time with me. How do we know they're functioning that
Yeah.
way out there?
Yeah. So, that is it. We try to on our onboarding. So when we get a new hire, we'll have an onboarding orientation time, and we really do focus in on our mission and values and in that kind of training platform. How can they implement the values we have here into their everyday care, or into just their time at the front desk or behind the computer in the billing office. Any of our positions, we all feel that for us, our mission is unique. Our mission is to serve Christ by providing pediatric therapy. We want to do that in a way that promotes all of our values. And so we work to give them some concrete examples on the front end in their training and then celebrate those along the way, whether it's in our weekly newsletters or in manager meetings, and try to highlight some of those values and point out, it's not just me anymore, but if another supervisor is in a building, they see someone doing something excellent, you say out loud, this is, so and so is doing something the OPTC way. This is how we want to do things. This is how we want to, give our patient education to our parents. This is how we want to hold people accountable for visits and compliance. Or it's just celebrating wins in the culture that we expect. So we have a kind of a tolerance for certain things, and we have a certain way that we like to kind of have our culture here. And that's what's helped us to maintain really great people, and retain them over time so that we can kind of keep that continuity. And things happen, we know that people um, we have a lot of women in our industry here in our company. Out of 100, only 2 are male. So often there's a maternity leave or they're moving for their spouse's job or things like that. And so we want to make sure that if the care gets moved from one clinician to another, that the parent's experience is just the same, that it's just as great. So that when they come into the clinic, it's something special, something different. And that is translated just really through training and from the managers continuing that follow-up.
Talk about the importance of culture, Amanda, and then how you and Deanna got serious about culture. Because when you start a company, you're starting it because of a dream, right? You mentioned your daughter
Yeah.
needed some speech therapy, and you were looking for a way to get her the specialty care she needed, and like, oh, this is let's do this for more people, right? So you started on a dream, you got this idea, but then when you start adding people to it, I when did culture become important? How did you and Deanna kind of agree on this culture you wanted to build, and what were some of the steps you took kind of forward before hiring people to integrate them into that culture?
Yeah, I would say even in the early days, we were both really united on our why and our mission. Even though at that time we didn't have it formally typed out or written on the website, we knew what we were here to do and that we really wanted the families that come to our then one clinic to feel like it was something special. And we wanted our team to feel like it was something special. We're in pediatric therapy, which is difficult to compete kind of in the marketplace for clinicians on on compensation maybe. So we think, what can we do different to help them want to stay, make this a great quality place to work, and to give them something that is a place they wouldn't want to leave, and they would refer their
Mhm.
friends to. And so we knew in the beginning that was going to be our only kind of secret sauce was our culture because we couldn't be other, we couldn't be the hospital in what we could compensate them in, or home health or something like that. So we had to have something that set us apart, so we dug in deep to, staying united on our why and not compromising that. Often you'll hear us say quality over quantity is important for us. And so it, kind of being united in that um, has helped. And we just really use that mission to drive all of our decisions, whatever it is. We want to make sure that we are kind of going back to the mission to help us drive that.
Mm. So good. Yeah, I love that you said it becomes our secret sauce, right? Because you can't compete sometimes with bigger organizations that have deeper pockets, but where we can compete is our values and
Mhm.
culture, how we make people feel, right? I wrote a book, Quit Losing Talent, and all the research that's out there that we included in that book is people make a decision to stay with us based on how they are made to feel, basically by their leadership team, by their do they feel valued? And you can do that not just through compensation. I mean, the reality is compensation is still third, fourth, fifth down the line,
Mhm.
the list of why people decide to stay with a company. So when you and Deanna are faced with one of those challenging decisions, where does culture bleed into that? How do y'all hold each other accountable to making the decision based on the mission, the values of the organization versus, wow, this would be easier if we just made it as a financial decision or not?
Yeah, and I think that is it. I mean, we have to really communicate, especially now as we've gotten bigger and we've taken on different hats. We can't both be in every room every time a decision is needed to be made. So we know that as long as we're anchored in our why and we have a lot of trust with each other, then that decision will be rooted to the mission. Not to say, we definitely want to make sure that we're always communicating, but it's that why that drives each of the decisions, to help us know that we're going to not veer out of our like quality over quantity. And it is hard, especially, as not to get political or as reimbursements have changed,
Mm.
you have to work harder to be where you were once before. And so um, it'd be tempting to lean away from what our values are, just to be able to continue to do great things for your employees and that kind of stuff. And so we've always kind of stick back to that quality over quantity, and make sure we're really protecting the mission that's so important to our foundation.
It's good. So when you guys struggle to find someone, I think in our pre-conversation, you mentioned it's really hard to find a pediatric psychologist.
Yeah.
It's kind of the unicorn out there in that market space, right? And navigating the complexities of also the female-dominated staffing and maternity leaves and, challenges that we have with kids as maybe, your female employees are maybe the ones expected to take care of the kids when they're sick and those kind
Mhm.
of things. Um, Talk about how what you've done to deal with those challenges that all organizations face, how you communicate with your team about the importance of showing up, but also being available to, their family needs and those types of things. Because I think, again, this is where as leaders, we got to figure this piece out. I'm constantly talking about hospitals, about working with flex scheduling and, just trying to get creative and different ideas to one of the things that COVID kind of challenged all of us to do is the work from home mindset, right? And how can we get more flexible in that? So, what are some things you guys have done?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, because you have to kinda be a little more flexible before when you think about the work a clinician does, it's difficult to do that remotely. There's a little bit of telehealth that we, can get into in some of our, departments, but we've been open to documentation at home, even if they need to do a parent feedback call or some education. So we do allow for a portion of at-home work, and then certainly across our admin team, we'll see lots of flexibility in at-home options there, which has given us sometimes it's like we need this room that you're working out of to treat speech and so we'll give that up to and let someone go home and use that space for treatment. But as far as kind of finding that unicorn, it is hard, and we are in that industry that's just difficult sometimes. But over time, it's grown as our brand and company has grown. That's gotten easier. But I think we have to kind of go back to our mission and our values and trying to find someone that aligns right.
Mm,
Because we'll get, resumes from all over. And if it's not going to be the right fit, we don't want to bring them in and then cause, disruption as it turned over in just a few months. And so
mm,
there's a lot of investment of time from the training and credentialing and onboarding that we're real protective of our fit up front. So we really
mm,
try to vet that and it's a challenge, we pray
mhm.
hard and look hard is what we say.
Yeah. Look, there's nothing more important. I often say the most important decision we make as leaders is who decisions. And what I mean by that is who we hire, right? Because if you hire right, your job is much easier as a leader. If you hire wrong, it challenges a lot of things, right? So, um, what happens? I'm assuming, I've done this long enough. I'm assuming you've made at least one hiring mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not share names, but how
Right.
how do how does that impact you as a leader? How does it impact the culture? How does it impact the team? And what did you do about it to fix it so that maybe you got better the next time?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the times that we've been in a hurry, it's probably been the most, if we're trying to, you have to split your mind between thinking about the kids and holding care and that access to care versus, bringing someone on that's going to be really excellent.
Mhm,
And so if I find myself a little bit too mom hearted and trying to get just a therapist in there that'll help um, continue the care, then we might have fallen short um, on the picking that right person. And so I think I've had to, and Deanna would say the same, think about like just recognizing it and we'll work first. If it's something we can coach and train and try to build into, we want to, especially if we're pretty invested
mm,
from that onboarding perspective. But we have to be willing to say goodbye and have those um, kind of, at least like call it a good goodbye, so that it's a nice exit. But sometimes we're just maybe not the right fit for someone, and that's okay. I used to take it personally, and be sad, thinking we couldn't fix this one or we could make them happy, we couldn't get them to perform. But sometimes we do have to recognize that this setting isn't for everyone, and just having that kind of conversation with them. And often we can part ways, sweetly, and it's not too terrible.
yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I'm a believer there are no bad people, they're just bad fits when it comes to work,
Yeah.
right? And I love that you shared with the audience. So I hope you're listening, lead up listeners. Being in a hurry is a mistake.
Mhm.
Be rushing to find somebody just to fill a role is a mistake if we don't take our time to understand who they are, right? Right, and
Yeah.
how who they are fits with our culture and fits with our values, we may make a mistake. I talk about doing release well conversations.
Uh-huh.
You call it a good separation, I think, but
Yeah.
I think if we release well, we're having a conversation with them, so at least it's not about the person, it's just about the fit. They go out to the marketplace and become a stealth recruiter for us because of the way we treated them on the way out the door, not just the way we treated them as they were coming in. So I think that's important as well. One of the things y'all have done that I was impressed in talking with you before is built an internal, university, OPTC university. So talk about the need to build that, why you did that, and what you're teaching. What are you really driving uh, people toward through that university?
Yeah, I mean, it really is to make sure that everyone is learning the same things, um, the same way, and
Mhm.
not to say there isn't, flexibility in, how you communicate with the parent over the phone, but we wanna make sure that we have that sample of excellence for people. So, in the beginning, they're learning things, just about mission and values, but, others are learning things, about just speech, and this what we call it the speech way. And it's, how do you do your sessions at OPTC in a way that's both clinically sound, but then also meets our expectations of that excellence experience for the family. And so they have a series of, one-on-ones with their manager. They also have a guidebook they use, and then check-ins biweekly to make sure we're all staying on track to meet those outcome goals. And then in time, it even helps a therapist see if they want to maybe lead up and move and do a different role and maybe leadership. That same OPC kind of university or training course
Mhm.
can help them to get, kind of outfitted for that next step sometimes.
Hmm. What kind of things leadership wise? Because that's important, right? You can't be everywhere for everybody. You said I think 7 locations you have.
Yeah,
That
if you
correct?
count our admin site, yeah, and
Yeah.
so we, are treating out of 6 right now and looking for another to add, actually, so we'll get if we talk again, it could be more, um, but yes.
What are you doing to make sure your leaders are equipped in those locations? Because leadership is really what drives your culture, right? You and Deanna can talk about it. You can onboard with it, but your leaders drive it. They determine whether it actually lives out in the organization. In that university, what are you doing to make sure your leaders are fully equipped to kind of lead the OPTC way and make sure they have this capacity and the skill set to lead effectively so we don't create major turnover issues?
Yeah, Deanna, one of her strengths really is that relationship building and, connection with a lot of our, clinicians, and so, it's that, uh, there's a biweekly meeting that we do with managers, and she, often leads that, kind of pouring into them, whether it's in, normal updates that are needed, kind of that, nuts and bolts of practice, but then also, kind of pearls of wisdom in, saying things like quick, clear, and kind, or, having those hard conversations, or, how to lead a new clinician. So there's various topics that kind of get added in. And they do those on a biweekly basis, and then in some check-ins that happen also on the opposite week. And if there are new, they get kind of a mentor leader, so that another leader could also help be alongside them, answer those questions, help them understand their reports they're accountable for, and that kind of thing. So we work with a lot of buddies around here.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and leadership 101 type of things, right? That
Yeah.
they seem like 101, but they take a lot of skill to have a hard conversation with someone, hold
Yeah.
them accountable or redirect. How do you handle look, let's be real. Some leaders, some people they say yes to the leadership role. They don't really want the leadership responsibility. They maybe want the title, they want the
Mhm.
pay, but they don't really wanna develop as a leader. How do you guys handle that when somebody kinda resists the leadership training? They know they gotta do the CEU training, but maybe they resist the leadership training, and how do you handle that with them and to get them bought in or maybe they're not cut out for leadership.
Yeah, I think it is that. It's kind of discerning that with them and um, trying the retraining method and the coaching, and letting them know where maybe we just have a little bit of room to grow in certain areas and helping them to see those with us, and coaching along the way. That's our first attempt. But we have come to a crossroads with some people that they learned that maybe this isn't what they wanted. What they meant was they want to lead an occupational therapist in treatment, protocols and in report writing and maybe but they didn't really want to have to hold them accountable for productivity or showing up on time or, getting their notes signed on time. They don't like to do that part. And
Mhm.
so we might recognize that together. And it isn't a goodbye. It's just a shift to, okay, now we're going to, move them over to back to a clinician role that doesn't have that leadership piece attached to it. And they're happier, their team's happier, and so it's happened often, because we have before made the mistake that just because they, maybe were a PT supervising physical therapist assistants, that by nature they needed to become a manager, to
Mm,
supervise those people. And then we learned that isn't always the case. Sometimes they just want to be the physical therapist.
yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't mean I love what you said about we move them back into a role that they're more suited for, where they're
Yeah.
happier. They're not a bad person, right? They're just maybe
No.
not they don't wanna lead or they're not a fit for leadership, so we don't wanna lose a great person, a great clinician, just because they're not a fit for leadership. I see so many organizations make that mistake of letting people fail to the place that they lose them versus just finding a better fit for them. So I love that, you guys have figured that out, and are working hard to make that happen. Let's dive deeper into this alignment because I work you and Deanna, you're two-person team. Y'all are the two co-CEOs. Alignment is critical. I work with a lot of executive teams, so there's typically a CEO, but a few other
Uh-huh.
level leaders around them. How do you and Deanna create alignment in direction? What role does Deanna play versus what role do you play? Who gets to make the decision as, hey, this is where we're going? You want to do it together, right? But that's not you don't always agree, I'm sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, we we often agree, which has been good, and, but no, I do think we have to, um, be we learned that we couldn't, like I said, couldn't be, everything all together, and we needed to kinda separate half. Right now, the way and that's shifted over time, and we'll kinda go back to, the same thing as we did with other leaders is this isn't where I feel fulfilled or she feels fulfilled, and so we'll do a little mix up sometimes over the past 12 years, but where we are now, is she, works hard in the, kinda vision casting, the people, relationships, external relationships, and leading, the team underneath that, and then I, kinda live in the lane of more like systems operations, and people development, from the clinician compliance to clinician, development of the excellence, the OBTC way, what we expect in documentation, things like that for coding and billing. And so they fit our strengths a little bit differently. So if the decision kind of falls in um, my lane, most of the time I'll do those. And if they're more her lane, she does those. And if they're big overarching things or they're, large, we're going to jump into a lease for, several years. That's a lot of dollars. And so we'll make those
Mhm.
commitments together as co-owners. So we just kind of find this balance of uh, what is hers and what's mine, and what do we do kind of together. It
Yeah, that's
probably feels
good.
like a couple at home, like my husband and I have a similar relationship in making decisions, and similar to that, I'd say.
It's so good. I think that's important for teams, whether it's a two-person team or a five-person team, to be aware of the strengths, right? Know what your own strengths are,
Mhm.
and know what your co-leaders' strengths are, and try to get each other in that lane where we can be most successful together. I think that's super important. So, what have you learned most? What's the one or two critical leadership lessons you've learned most over the last 12 years that you think our listeners might benefit from?
Oh gosh. I think I Probably the best thing I might could say to someone is, as a leader, I've learned I don't need to know all the answers, and
Yeah.
that's hard, is wanting to know all the answers, and so now I just have leaned into knowing that I need to show up, show grit, show humility, and, lead those around me so that, um, ideally, they're doing a great job, and if I'm not here, it'll still do just as great, where before I was, feeling like it had to be I had to know the answers to everything, every decision had to come by me, and so now it's kind of that trust is there, and the systems are in place to feel like, uh, it's not all leaning just on me. And so that was our original, vision that Deanna and I shared, is that we want Oklahoma Pediatric Therapy Center to be, something bigger than us or our equipment or our walls, that the people that are in it. And so we have a great leadership team that is, kind of working with us on the operations side, staffing side, HR and credentialing. So we really lean into them. Often they certainly know much more about either of us in certain areas. So we kind of
Yeah.
have those experts within our walls that have been helpful.
It's so good. Let's talk about secession for a minute because I think all leaders really struggle with secession. Like, who's going to take my place? And it's a real struggle for founders, right? We're talking about founders, but in any organization, like, who's going to take my place, or how do I let go of some things so that someone
Yeah.
can take my place? What are you guys looking at? You've been here 12 years. Maybe you're going to work and do this thing for another 20 years, but let's say you want to take a vacation, or you want to take a sabbatical or something like that. How do y'all think through secession, and who could fill in for Amanda, or who could fill in for Deanna when or if you decide to hang it up and let someone else do this thing? How are you preparing that next wave of leaders behind you?
Yeah, we definitely want that. We want um there to be the systems in place that, and the confidence in the leaders that are here, that they don't we have a COO now, and she is doing a lot of great work, across the operations side. We have a billing director and an HR director, director of operations across all of our facilities, and kind of therapist staffing side. And so amongst that kind of executive leadership team, I often say they will be just fine if I'm not here, and
Mm,
Deanna the same, when we're here, they will ask us first. But, you know, over the past probably 2 years, that's been one of our focuses, is to say, hey, I'd like to not work 40 hours up into my 60s, so
mm,
someone else is going to have to do XYZ job. Um, and so giving others that authority and that kind of permission to fly, and has get come a long way. And so they're coming up with great ideas. They're problem solving, and helping really take OPTC kind of to that next level, is knowing that we have good leadership underneath us that can help us to thrive. Even if I, got blessed to go on a 6 week sabbatical or something, I feel like
mm.
we'd be okay.
It's good. How do you look? Leadership is really, really hard. Um, because we've got the lives of, you got 100 lives in the palm of your hands, basically, when you own the company like you do, right? But sometimes you probably are tired. You don't want to lead. You just want somebody else to lead. You're burnt out. You're overwhelmed. I know in the early days of starting a business, there is no time to feel sorry for yourself, right? No time to take a break because you gotta grow this thing. You gotta add more business. What do you do now? How do you handle those days where you feel like, man, I just need a break. I just need to sit down and relax a little bit. How do you deal with some of this feeling of burnout, overwhelm, too much to do yourself, that would help other leaders at your level?
Yeah, I think it's being really intentional, about taking time outside of the work and the grind. I like to show grit and hustle, but then at the same time, that can give you that burnout if you're doing it too much. So I want to even set that example to my team, and say, okay, I'm going on a vacation. I'm going to be gone for truly 7 days. You've got this. Here's, who they can reach to, a point person for different questions, and know that I really can check out. Before I felt like I still had to pack my laptop on the plane and, have my text, if we're on a transit or on something, you always wanted it to feel like you were connected. But being okay with stepping away and being intentional about making that time. And we ask our team to do that too, to recharge. So that's got to happen. It's almost a non negotiable. So Deanna and I will hold each other accountable to that. So if it's been a year and I haven't traveled or stepped away for a while, or same for her, we will make sure that we get that time. Or like you said, you do kind of get burned out. And I think too, um, each quarter we'll do a bit of a reflection of just celebrating our wins. And as you're thinking about your plans for the future and your goals, we can get caught up in our numbers and strategic
Mhm.
planning and those kinds of things. But then just thinking back to our why and celebrating um, those big wins and things that we've done, things we've celebrated with people, can help kind of refuel you or recharge you. Um, because if we don't have the why, it's all real tiring.
Yeah. 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 It's good. So where do you go for answers, right? You mentioned earlier, I used to feel like I had to know all the answers, but the reality is, at every level of leadership, we grow to, we need advice, we need help, we need coaching, mentoring. Where do you go? Where do you get help so that you don't get stuck? What resources or things do you look to kind of help you get from unstuckness to being able to continue to move forward as a leader?
Yeah. So, I one, there are some groups that we're a part of, similar industries that even locally kind of dealing with some of our own state challenges, participate on a advisory board for our Medicaid system. To You're all having kind of the same pain points, so you can learn in that area specific to maybe billing or credentialing. But then in this leading a group this size, we're running out of groups like ours,
Mhm.
or friends like us that do what we do, and so it's trying to learn and read and listen to podcasts, and you know, I am thankful for your leadership podcast. That's maybe how we got acquainted, is me running into a lot of great resources there. Um, we don't know what we don't know. I always there's stuff out there that we can learn, and so just waiting to for a need for it isn't always the best. So I try to get
Mhm.
ahead of it. Learn some new
Yeah.
topics in advance, so that I have that in my toolbox for the future. Uh, but there is so much to learn. I feel like unqualified, and sometimes we say, because the doctor of chiropractic is not an MBA. And so I keep trying to do some online study or a CEU course or a conference in this area. Um, but you just have to keep learning, but then also just lean to the people that are the experts,
Mm,
so I don't have to know it all.
so good. Yeah. So always be learning, right? That's the mindset. I think today, I'm trying to educate myself on AI because AI is such a new thing to me, and I'm loving what I'm learning, but I'm trying to educate myself on how to use AI effectively and ethically, right?
Mhm.
In my business world, and I think we've got to be willing to stay in this constant mind of learning. I fortunately picked that up, when I was in my 20s, and I became a self growth junkie
Yeah.
at the age of 23, and I haven't stopped yet. Which Amazon Prime loves all the books I ordered that I never read. Right, but it's like
Yes.
I need that book. I need that. I mean, I love listening to podcasts. I love talking to leaders like you because I learn things from this podcast. Right, I interview great leaders every single year, and and I get coaching, right? I utilize coaching
Mhm.
myself. I have a couple of business coaches that I use personally to help me continue to grow
Mhm.
and it's not necessarily that they have a new idea. They just help me get out of my own way sometimes with the idea that I have,
Mhm.
right? Which I think is important. So, I love that you have that mindset as well, Amanda, that helps us continue to grow. Love what you guys have done at OPTC, Oklahoma Pediatric Therapy Centers, Yukon, Oklahoma. Tell our listeners the website so they can go check out the great stuff you guys are doing.
Oh, thanks. Yes, it is .com. So that's for Oklahoma Pediatric Therapy Center and Cares. So you're welcome to hop on and see us. We share a lot of great things through our Instagram, which is also the same OPTC Cares. You can see some great wins that we celebrate with our families. So happy to meet anyone online that
Yeah.
way.
Housh, Amanda Housh. I'll make sure that we drop her LinkedIn uh, connection link on in the show notes, her company website in the show notes. They've built a great culture and they started that early on in the process. Too many organizations kind of, well, let's get to 100 million and then let's build the culture. No, let's build the culture to get to 100 million faster or whatever the goal is. So I love what you guys have done, Amanda, and what you stand for as a leader and your mission. Thanks so much for spending time with me today on the Lead Up podcast and sharing with our audience. This was a great conversation.
Hey, thank you so much. This really was fun and so good to see you again.